It's my honor to be part of this, and I've been asked to read something that was not written by me. It was written by community member Judith Ezekiel, who was unable to make this rally today. Judith Ezekiel, Professor Emeritus at Wright State University of African American and Women's Studies, is the author of Feminism in the Heartland. She has published extensively on issues of social movements, particularly the women's movement and comparative race and ethnicities. Ezekiel has long been politically active, from the anti-Vietnam War and women's movements to labor organizing and anti-racist groups. Founder of the first French Women of Color Research Group, charter member of the French Confederation of Black Associations, member of the Toulouse's Observatory of Discrimination. She also has served on the Yellow Springs 365 project as a lifetime educator on women's movements, activism, and issues of gender and race. According to the report by the African American Policy Forum, the current racial justice movement has, quote, developed a clear frame to understand the killings of black men and boys, yet black women who are profiled, beaten, sexually assaulted, and killed by law enforcement officials are conspicuously absent from this frame, unquote. Because of this sexism, when black women are killed, the ensuing protests, if they even occur, are tiny compared to when black men are killed. This talk has one goal: to convince you to take into account black women's lives so that all black lives matter. A recent article states that police kill one black woman every month. In early 2015, Judith Ezekiel and her students investigated the cases of over 50 black women killed by the police or in custody. They found the following. In some cases, black women are killed in similar ways to black men. For example, in 2012, after a verbal exchange in a Chicago park, police officer Dante Servin shot 22-year-old Rekia Boyd in the back and later claimed that he thought her cell phone was a gun. As in almost all cases, he was found not guilty. Rekia Boyd, say her name. Rekia Boyd. Black women, like black men, get shot for, quote, driving while black, unquote, or being a passenger like Melissa Williams. Police had stopped the car, but the driver raced off, resulting in a high-speed chase with 62 police cars in pursuit. Police fired 137 bullets into that car, 15 of which were shot directly through the windshield from the hood of the car, even though a Supreme Court decision prohibits firing on suspects when they present no threat to public safety or imminent danger to the officer. Williams and her friends were unarmed. Melissa Williams, say her name. Melissa Williams. A third scenario is the specter of, quote, the black woman with a knife. And here it doesn't seem to matter if it's a machete or a butter knife. Take the case of Erica Collins in Cincinnati, who after a dispute took a knife and threatened to slash her sister's tires. The police were called, and when Collins didn't drop the knife, they shot and killed her. Witnesses say the police were never in danger. Erica Collins, say her name. Erica Collins. Another tragic situation involves mentally ill women. The family calls for help, and the police kill them. This happened to 37-year-old Tanisha Anderson in Cleveland. When she tried to escape the confinement of the cruiser, a policeman slammed her face down on the pavement, put his knee on her back, and handcuffed her. She was then left there dying for 20 minutes. And then there was Cerise Francis in New York, whose family wanted EMTs, but got the police instead. They wrestled her onto her bed, then 4 of them piled on top of her and suffocated her. And to Kayla Moore, the schizophrenic trans woman who stopped breathing when the police violently restrained her and then refused to give her mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Like George Floyd, these 3 women could not breathe. Tanisha Anderson, say her name.
Tanisha Anderson.
Sharice Francis, say her name.
Sharice Francis.
Kayla Moore, say her name.
Kayla Moore.
Another scenario involves women in distress, like Anna Brown, a homeless woman in severe pain who was turned away from 3 emergency rooms. When she finally refused to leave, she was arrested and thrown onto the concrete floor of a cell where she died within 15 minutes. Anna Brown, say her name.
Anna Brown.
Then there is, quote, sleeping while black, unquote, like in the murder of Breonna Taylor. Or years earlier when police broke into the wrong Detroit apartment and shot into the dark, killing 7-year-old Ayanna Stanley Jones. Or when plainclothes agents with a no-knock warrant cut off burglar bars and broke down the door at the home of 92-year-old Katherine Johnson. Johnson had fired a shot through the door in self-defense. They returned fire with 39 shots, killing her. Breonna Taylor, say her name.
Breonna Taylor.
Ayanna Stanley Jones, say her name.
Ayanna Stanley Jones.
Katherine Johnson, say her name.
Katherine Johnson.
These are only a tiny handful of examples. We must do better to defend these women and prevent these deaths. In 2015, when the police officers who killed Rekia Boyd were cleared, those protests drew dozens. The following year, when charges were dropped against Freddie Gray's killer, it caused riots. Black women are also policed more and differently than white women. For instance, back in the first half of the 20th century, only 4 white women were placed in chain gangs, but there were nearly 2,000 black women. A condition of parole for some of these women was to do unpaid domestic work in a white household. After slavery, even though the proportions were lower than for men, black women were also lynched. Today, for the same crime, blacks are more likely than whites to be arrested and incarcerated, and that holds true for women. In fact, black women constitute the fastest growing population in American prisons, and mostly for non-violent crimes. The policing starts young. One study showed that compared to white girls, black girls were far more likely to be suspended and expelled from school, and in proportions higher than when you compare black boys to white boys. In addition to these examples, black women's bodies have been subjected to particular violence. During slavery, rape was not only tolerated but encouraged because of the higher price for children with paler skin. Black women's bodies have been used for experiments. The so-called father of gynecology owes his discovery to surgery performed on slave women without any anesthesia. Still today, many medical students think blacks experience less pain than whites. Black women are not provided with protection for battering and rape since they are understandably distrustful for themselves and their community of calling the police, and no white man has ever been sentenced to death for the rape of a black woman. Black women are victimized, but they are also in the leadership of the rebellion. One example is the hashtag Say Her Name movement created in honor of Sandra Bland to fight police brutality against black women, with leadership by women such as Kimberly Crenshaw, and the movement Black Lives Matter has its roots in the work of 3 young black queer women, Alicia Garza, Patrice Coolers, and Opal Tometi, who were activists in groups organizing domestic workers, fighting against mass incarceration, and for just immigration. Let us rally beside them and say, Black women's lives matter. Black women's lives matter.
Black women's lives matter.
Black women's lives matter.
Black women's lives